In this episode, I'll begin my reaction to the seventh episode in Daredevil's Born Again second season titled The Hateful Darkness. So let's get into The Hateful Darkness. Now, I have to preface this podcast by saying, I missed last week. I'm sorry. I have to be better. And, I got no excuses. I was in New York, okay? That's all that matters. But what an episode. Daredevil Born Again, Season 2, Episode 7. I don't have words. We lost a great character tonight. And, well, not tonight, but, when the episode aired, it just, you know, we get one Gandolfini and we lose him. I don't know what to say, bro. Daniel Blake dead. That's the biggest, you know, sorry for spoilers ahead. Um, you know, it's sad. It's sad. I actually was enjoying Daniel. You get the news. Michael Gandolfini will be in Daredevil Born Again season 2, and he's gonna be this character. And I was like, okay, I don't really know what's going on with this guy in season 1. And then in season 2, I think I really predicted the storyline to a T. I was like, he's gonna sim too hard for BB and get himself in trouble, and he did exactly that. It's like, bro. And last week I didn't. I'm not covering. I'm not gonna do last week's episode this week, but he had the moment to kiss her. He pulls out the chip. Maybe should have went for that kiss and just ran away and lived life. Screw New York City. Why do all these people care so much about New York City? Like, if Fisk was doing that, I'd just leave. I'm not very. I was in New York City last week, okay, and I'm not like gonna die for my city like that. And he didn't put up a fight. I thought he was gonna have a trick up his sleeve. I thought he was gonna turn the tables on Buck, but he doesn't do that. So, biggest news of this hour: Matt's alone by himself. Daniel's dead. BB's on the run. Not a lot of Fisk this episode. I think he's kind of just in a pissed off state. I think maybe they're saving his rage for the finale of the this season. But yeah, Jessica Jones is there to help out Matt, which is cool. And what else is going on? Bullseye's bullseyeing. Karen Page is Karen Paging. And Heather Glenn is a fucking psychopath. I'm sorry, but that's just true. All right, let's get into the beginning of the episode. So, coming off of last week, Karen Page, who's done a 180 in my heart. I maybe just as a reflective state of life, there's people, I didn't like Karen Page's character in the Netflix show, and I was just talking about my Survivor last night recap. I didn't like Rick Devens the first time he played. Maybe I was just like an angry teen. Now I'm like 25, life's good, I can see the appreciation, but Karen's been really cool this season. I actually really like Karen Page. Fisk approaches her in jail, so I guess they're gonna do Karen the quote unquote official way and like legally prosecute her just like they did the swordsman, even though the swordsman escaped and ran off the screen because we only needed him for a couple episodes because he was a vigilante and that was relevant. We can, Frank Castle's got a TV special coming out, and Luke Jones and Iron Fist are coming next season. Luke Jones, Luke Cage, but no, seriously, they're gonna do Karen the official way, have a trial. Fisk kind of has tries to have a moment, and there's actually a lot of built up. You forget all the lore of this stuff. This is basically Daredevil season 5. What do you think about it? 3 seasons on the Netflix show, 1 season on Disney Plus. Now this is the second season on Disney Plus. Plus the Defenders stuff is in there. Plus Kingpin and Hawkeye, Echo. If you watched Echo, Daredevil, and She-Hulk, which we're not talking about fucking She-Hulk. So, there's a lot of built-up stuff between these characters. And you forget what the history of two people like Fisk and Karen are, but for them to have this sort of interaction and sort of, standoff was cool. I have to say it was very tough to watch Karen be restricted in both this interaction and the interaction with Glenn later on in the episode where, she has the handcuffs out with Glenn, she's behind bars here, and, Fisk is like pissed off with her, and he's like, "Yeah, I know you killed Wes." That comes up a lot tonight. Her killing Wesley. Well, I keep saying tonight. It's not. It's a couple days later. But she killed Wesley. Obviously, was one of Fisk's best friends. But I thought Karen kind of got the better of Fisk in this situation where she's able to force him into a reaction. He's freaking out. He's lashing out. He grabs her and starts choking her. It's like, dude, this guy just has no regard for anything, and he can just do whatever he wants. It's like, bro, chill. He's not gonna. He's definitely not gonna chill. But like, are there cameras? Are there security? There's just nothing in this prison where Karen is. She's just in a cell by herself. It is what it is. But yeah, Fisk, I think Karen got the better for her in this situation. She's not the better for it physically though after she gets almost choked to death by Kingpin. But anyways, back in the Matt lair, Karen's gone. He's really just down to Bullseye, who he lets go, and tells him, I need you to do something," which was on the back of my mind of this whole episode of what did Matt task Bullseye with doing when, these two have been kind of a fun duo this season to follow. Obviously, I think it's hard to jump from Bullseye killing Foggy in season one, episode one, to being like, oh, Bullseye is a good guy, but we know he was paid off. Vanessa made him do it, and we love Bullseye now. So cool to see this duo go back and forth. Matt's like, hey, I'm gonna let you go, but you got to do this one thing for me, boss. And Bullseye's like, I got you. So we'll have to see what that is later on. The biggest point of this episode, you know, they're throwing us bones. It's a lot of nostalgia, which I think maybe is like Marvel's like cope with trying to like get back on track, but it's working. So last week we got Jessica Jones, the week before we got Wesley and Foggy. This week we get Mahoney. It's like all these characters are just reappearing. So Mahoney is back on screen. He's able to help our folks out. He's able to get Karen out of jail for like a minute, which is crazy. Couldn't they just run away? I guess not, because like he'd get in trouble, but he's not a lead of detective. So I'm sure we'll see more of Mahoney, if not this week, and then in episode or and then in season three. But good to see the man Brett Mahoney back on screen. They're pulling all the stops, and Nadeem was mentioned as well in this episode. Lot of lore going on with this Daredevil Born Again season two. Continuing on though, Fisk now is talking to Dr. Heather Glenn, who is probably my least favorite character of the show in a good way. Like she's not a bad character, she's just annoying to watch because of the way they it's like one of those Cersei Lannisters are like you hate her guts, but that's because she's doing a great job acting. So nothing in regards to the actress, but like fuck Heather Glenn. She stole an earring last episode, which like I thought was a minor plot detail that just didn't matter at all, but it does matter because Fisk knows that she stole the earring and just doesn't care. I think he likes this little like sneaky side of her, so he's gonna maybe try and capitalize on her when she eventually goes batshit, which is just slowly and slowly happening. Trying to, I didn't even get to talk about her trying to choke Buck last episode, and now this stealing the earring, and then later on in the episode. So, not a fan of Heather Glenn, but I know we're going to see more of her, and I'm sure she'll become like a supervillain somehow. So there's that. Obviously, one of the big scenes, one of my favorite scenes of this episode was Matt's reemergence in court for Karen Page. So Karen Page, friend of the program of Matt Murdock. They were in law together a couple years ago. I don't know if Karen joined with Kristen. It didn't seem like they were on the same page there, but I wouldn't be surprised if she was a part of that. But it seems like she kind of fell off the radar of doing all that stuff while she was a big target of Fisk and the vigilante hunt. But when her trial begins, she walks into Kristen, everything's looking normal. And I kind of thought this was going to happen, right? Where they have the conversation before with when Mahoney's letting him out. He's like, I'll come and support you. And she's like, Are you sure? He's like, Yeah, I'm doing this. And she's like, Okay, fine. So, but him actually coming back into court was an awesome scene. I got some chills running down the spine. I thought that was awesome. For him walking in, he's the man of the hour. It's Matt fucking Murdock, baby. So great scene of him coming back to court to help defend Karen. They sort of press two task force officers. We see obviously Powell is just a piece of shit, whatever. But the guy with the scars on his face, like, hey, what were you doing there at Matt Murdock's place when he wasn't even there? You were carrying ARs and stuff, trying to like get that public perception pumping of maybe the task force is just basically pieces of shit, all loser guys. Which I don't know how they're. It's hard to tell what the public's you know deception or perception of all this is, where you had the riots last week, but then like seemingly a lot of people voted for Fisk and wanted this. So it's like, is this just a divided city who's really winning? And like apparently Fisk is losing in the polls, but he's still just allowed to do whatever he wants. So I don't know what's going to happen there. But the governor, who is apparently, I don't really like this side plot. I feel like there are too many characters, and maybe it's good that we lost Daniel in that sense. But like, I don't care about the governor and like this Washington D.C. guy who apparently is connected to Jessica Jones, which I have to preface this by saying I did not watch The Defenders, I did not watch Jessica Jones, so I don't know what goes on in those shows. But I don't care about this guy from D.C. and he's supposed to be like this goofball guy, but he's like going up to the governor. He's like, hey, you got to call this off. I can help you with your town hall problem. And she's like, you know what? After the riots and after this trial exposes everything, which is kind of a weird note to go out on when like the trial isn't really that seemingly big of a deal in the grand scheme of everything that Fisk has done as mayor, but she's like, after that, I'm done. I'm out. So no more governor. She's calling it quits with Fisk. We'll see how that goes, right? And we get more of Daniel and BB. So Dio, one last ride for Daniel. He's gonna bring in BB to probably be killed and put in a body bag. I mean, Buck doesn't fuck around like that. Like, what are they gonna do with BB? They already control her media, so it's not like they're gonna be like, hey, we're gonna control this. Like, would they tell her to shut down the off-stream one? You know, what would be the plan there other than to just put a bullet in her head? So at the last second, and I don't think BB's like very. I thought BB was like very smart and like very like ahead of the game. Why did she still have the chip in her back pocket of the jacket? And like she's just very like I don't know. I don't want to be mean, but like I feel like she's not very with it right now, or I don't know if she ever really had what I thought she had. Um, but she realized that like the last second that he's not bringing her to a safe house, he's bringing her to be killed by Buck. But at the last second, she's like, no, no, please don't, Daniel. And he's like, okay, fine, you can go because I love you so much. But he still walks in. Like you should have ran away, Daniel. Daniel is very stupid in this series right now. Well, permanently because he's gone, But why would you, if you're gonna let her go, why would you walk inside when you know what's happening? It's like just like with the car stuff when Buck brings him upstate. It's like why would you go? Why would you just agree to do that? All that stuff when you know what's going to happen to you is potentially lethal to your life. I'm not. I think that's very stupid of Daniel. I don't know. I question a lot of his decision making throughout this series, especially this season. He kind of deserved to die just through the actions he was taking, in my opinion. But I think he was ultimately stuck between a rock and a hard place, and you got to do what you got to do when it comes down to that. Anyways, we get after the trial. Matt notices that there's some people sticking around, Pal and the task force boys, which was very a fast-paced thing where they're at the trial. These boys are sticking around. What are they going to do? Then Matt's walking through downstairs. There's security detail. Cherry involves, and then all of a sudden it's like a car comes and it's like boom, boom, boom. Like this was very like in your face action and shit. And Matt has to like pretend not to be Daredevil because he's in the public eye. He and Kristen duck behind a car. Cherry's shooting people. I think at least 2 or 3 police officer dies. Some task force members crash into a wall of the parking garage. So don't know the total injuries of that. All we know is that Matt makes it out okay. I'm assuming Kristen makes it out okay, or we would have seen her death on screen. But this was crazy of just like, holy, what's going on right now? And speaking of that, we cut to another scene of the governor in her house, which she's got this cozy fireplace that looks pretty nice to sit at. But we've seen her there a couple of times. There's somebody sneaks up behind her with one of those garrots, like those very thin wires you choke out people with. Oh, that's a scary proposition. But she's getting choked out. It's just like, okay, we just watched her die. We watched another Fisk hit. But there's a knife thrown by the one, the only Bullseye. Let's go. I love Bullseye right now. He saves the day with the knife, and he's got the signature throw. Awesome stuff right there. Bullseye saving the governor from death, and that was the thing earlier that Matt had assigned him to do. So Matt is helping out the governor through Bullseye. Good job, all. We saved him. We saved her for now. And yes, this is just proof that Fisk will obviously stop at nothing to get what he wants. So he's going to have the governor killed. And no, you won't. But we get Daniel refusing to give up where BB is, and like ironically, he doesn't actually know where she is. He's like, "Don't even tell me where you're going," because maybe he thought he for sure would have told her or told Buck that where she's going. But it doesn't seem like he was really even in like a deep pressure point. Like he did get the shit beat out of him, but it wasn't like he was like getting waterboarded or like I don't know. It didn't seem like he was like close to giving up information. He kind of just gets punched a bunch of times. But he refused to give it up, and he's just getting beat up over and over again. I was like, no way they're actually going to go through with this. Buck's just beating the shit out of him. Okay, that's the first part of it. We go to more scenes. Karen and Dr. Glenn. I don't like Dr. Glenn, man. She's very like conceited and like she pulls it. She does. I think she does overall win this interaction, where Karen was doing pretty well at the beginning. Like I know what you're about to read me, and it's always the classic first question of like, do you like some sort of magazines? And she's like, I know this test, I can just game it. Why don't we do something else? She like kind of flexes in her face, like I'm banging Matt now. You're not. Like you don't like how he was gone, but that's what's so hot about it to me. But she's like, well, you have a terrible relationship with men. You were, Frank Castle, and that the Frank Castle's the trigger for Karen, where she gets all pissed off. And then Glenn, I don't like how Glenn was slapping her when Karen's got the handcuffs on. That's not a fair fight. Come on, Glenn. But I don't think Glenn likes a fair fight where Buck just lets her choke her. Now you're slapping someone who's handcuffed. there's something going on with Dr. Glenn. I just can't put my finger on it. And Muse is, I don't know if we were even supposed to like notice Muse watching in the reflection of the jail cell. Crazy, bro. This Glenn chick is crazy, and I'm not down for it. But to wrap it all up, we get Matt praying at the altar for help and someone to pray for him. Luckily for him, Jessica Jones is there. You know, Bullseye walks away from the scene. Fisk is stewing somewhere. But what really we're focusing on is, will Buck pull the trigger on Daniel? And he does at the end of this episode, which is insane to me that this is it for Daniel. But R.I.P. to Daniel. He was a fun character. Just thought ultimately he was too stupid in the end. And Buck is just a savage, willing to do whatever it takes. Curious to see how, if this is explained at all to Fisk, like, because it seemed like there was kind of like a father-son like mirror relationship there. So I'm curious to see, will we get a scene of Fisk like mourning Daniel at all, or will Buck just be like, he was against us, and Fisk is like, okay, that's fine. But yeah, Daniel's dead. I feel like I've talked about it a lot, but I don't know. That was shocking. I was in shock. I was like, this show is insane right now. So R.I.P. Daniel Blake. We'll miss you. Favorite of the episode, I'm giving to Daniel. You know, last episode for Daniel only feels right, and you know, Matt had like a fine episode. It was cool, but like I give Matt favorite every episode, so give it to somebody else. Give it to Daniel. Least favorite, I said Buck initially, but I'm gonna go with Dr. Glenn. I don't like that girl. I'm sorry, and she was very annoying in this episode and also very weird. So Dr. Glenn gets my least favorite. That's it for Daredevil Born Again Season 2, Episode 7. Again, sorry, this is a little late, only 2 days late, but we did it regardless. And now there's only 1 week left of Daredevil Born Again Season 2. Episode 8 will come out on Tuesday, the finale of Season 2. So excited to see where this show goes, how they wrap this up. And we'll be here doing it live. Not live, but the same night it comes out. Hopefully, I'll have the podcast out for you guys. But yeah, that's it for Daredevil Born Again. Been a great season. Only missed 1 episode on the cast, so pretty good in that regard. And we'll see you next week. Big finales happening next week. We got not Sith, Maul, Shadow Lord. Last 2 episodes coming out on Monday. Daredevil Born Again season 2 finale coming out on Tuesday, and then Wednesday is Survivor 50. So we've been doing those last couple of weeks. It's been a great couple of weeks, but that is coming to an end. So make sure you subscribe, like, comment, do what you got to do for more show reviews, movie reviews, sports stuff. So I'll appreciate you sticking all the way through this video. And as always, be easy, y'all.